The dust hung thick in the air of the small frontier town, clinging to every breath and every step like it wanted to be remembered. The sun stood high, merciless and unforgiving, casting long shadows across the wooden buildings that had seen more hardship than hope. People gathered quietly along the porch of the town hall, whispering among themselves, their eyes fixed on the scene unfolding in the middle of the street. The cowboy stood firm, boots planted in the dirt, shoulders squared beneath years of exhaustion and unspoken grief. His hat was pulled low, shadowing eyes that had witnessed too much loss to still believe in easy kindness. He pointed toward the wooden crate between them, not in anger, but with a sharp certainty that made the onlookers uneasy. His voice, when it came, was rough but steady, carrying the weight of a man who had lived his life without leaning on anyone. Across from him stood the woman no one wanted. Her dress was faded, patched in places where fabric had given up long before she had. Her hands were clasped tightly at her chest, knuckles pale, as if she were holding herself together by will alone. Strands of hair slipped loose from her braid, framing a face marked not by beauty the town admired, but by survival. She did not look away from him, though fear trembled in her eyes. She had learned long ago that lowering her gaze only invited cruelty. The town had gathered for one purpose, to watch a choice be made. Every woman standing behind her had already been measured, judged, and dismissed in whispers. Too old, too quiet, too scarred, and she carried all three labels like invisible brands burned into her skin. No one expected the cowboy to choose her. He had arrived weeks earlier with dust on his coat and silence in his manner. People said he was looking for a wife, not out of love, but necessity. A ranch too big for one man. A life too lonely to endure another winter alone. The town council arranged the meeting, lining the women up as if they were supplies to be claimed, each one hoping, each one afraid. When his eyes landed on her, the whispers grew crueler. She won't last, someone murmured. She's trouble, said another. The cowboy heard them all, but his gaze never wavered. He saw something the others did not. Not weakness, but endurance. Not shame, but quiet strength. He saw a woman who had been bent by life but never broken by it. I choose her, he said at last. The silence that followed was heavier than the dust in the air. The woman's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. That maybe the sun had played tricks on her ears, the way hope sometimes did when it wanted to hurt you more. But when he stepped closer, lowering his hand, his voice gentler now, she understood this moment was real. I'm not offering you rescue, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I'm offering you a place where no one gets to decide your worth but you. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. She had cried enough in her life to know tears were precious things, not to be wasted on disbelief. They left town the next morning. The journey to the ranch was long and unforgiving, stretching across dry plains and rocky trails that tested both body and spirit. They spoke little at first. Silence had been their shared language long before they met. At night, they sat by the fire, staring into the flames as if the answers to their lives might rise with the smoke. She learned his name was Elias. A widower, though he never used the word. His wife had died years ago, carried away by sickness faster than love could save her. Since then, he had lived with the kind of loneliness that doesn't scream, but settles deep into the bones. He learned her name was Clara. She had worked wherever hands were needed, endured wherever kindness was absent. She did not tell him everything. Some wounds do not need to be spoken to be understood. When they reached the ranch, it was larger than she expected. Fields stretched wide, fences worn but standing, a house weathered by storms but solid. It was not beautiful, but it was honest. Like him, the days were hard. Clara worked alongside Elias, learning the land, tending animals, fixing what time had tried to steal away. Her hands grew calloused, her back sore, but her spirit lighter with each sunrise. No one shouted at her. No one watched her with judgment. Elias treated her as an equal, not a burden. At night, they shared meals in quiet companionship. Sometimes, he told stories of the land. Sometimes, she listened. Sometimes, she spoke of dreams she never believed she was allowed to have. Slowly, something shifted. It was not sudden. Love rarely is when it is real. It grew in the small moments. The way he noticed when she was tired and took over without a word. The way she mended his shirts carefully, as if each stitch mattered. The way silence between them became comfortable, no longer heavy. But the past does not release its hold easily. One evening, a rider arrived unannounced. A man from her former life, carrying old cruelty in his eyes and entitlement in his voice. He spoke of debts, of ownership, of promises Clara had never made but had been forced to live under. Fear returned like a familiar enemy. Elias stood between them without hesitation. He did not raise his voice. He did not draw his weapon. He simply said, "She is here by choice. And she stays." The man laughed, reaching for his gun. He never finished the motion. Elias's warning shot struck the ground inches from the man's boots. The message was clear. This land was no longer a place where Clara could be claimed or threatened. The rider left, cursing and defeated, his shadow disappearing into the dusk. That night, Clara broke. She cried in a way she never had before, releasing years of fear she had carried alone. Elias sat with her, not trying to fix her pain, only proving she no longer had to face it alone. "I didn't choose you because no one else wanted you," he said softly. "I chose you because you were strong enough to survive what would have destroyed others." She looked at him through tears, finally understanding what it meant to be seen. Seasons passed. The ranch flourished. Laughter replaced silence. The house filled with warmth not from fire alone, but from shared life. They married quietly, without spectacle, without witnesses beyond the land that had brought them together. The town heard stories. Some said the cowboy had made a mistake. Others said the unwanted bride had somehow tamed a hardened man. But none of them truly understood. Because love is not found in perfection. It is found in choice. And in a world that had turned its back on them both, two forgotten souls built something unbreakable. Not because they were wanted, but because they chose each other.